This video deals with suicide and may not be suitable for everyone. If you or someone you know is at risk, call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 1-800-273-8255 to speak confidentially with a trained counselor. For many people, the Hollywood sign is a symbol of glitz and glamour that attracts tourists year-round, but most people don't realize that a tragedy took place there that have many believing that the sign is haunted. Everything has a past that ultimately leads to a current reputation, some of which bear dark secrets hiding behind glitz and glamour and awe-striking landmarks, while others appear to be seemingly mundane. Hi, I'm Carol, and I'm an historical enthusiast, and I'm setting out to uncover the origins of places and things to find out how they earned their place not only in history, but in paranormal history as well. Before the sign had its dark moment in history, the infamous Hollywood sign was actually built as a direct result of the city's growing population. When it was built in 1923, its original purpose was actually to serve as a billboard for Hollywoodland, an upscale housing development that had recently been built by Harry Chandler. Chandler was a real estate mogul and the publisher of the Los Angeles Times. The sign cost Chandler $21,000 to put up, which was a huge investment to advertise the many miles of land that he had. He only intended to have it up for a year. Little did he realize it would still be standing today. Slightly modified, of course, but here it is. It's there, behind these trees. Each of the sign's 13 letters were 43 feet tall, though some sources say 50 feet tall and 30 feet wide. They were made of 3 feet by 9 feet metal squares that were held together with complex scaffolding, wires, pipes, and even telephone poles. By the late 1920s, just a few years after the sign was built, the term Hollywood had become a household name, synonymous with the fabulous movie pictures coming out of California. Unfortunately, the sign would make headlines for something much less glamorous, but more sad and tragic, just a little over a decade later. I've always wanted to get really close to the sign, like even wanted to touch the sign. But unfortunately, it's been fenced off and you can't really get that close to the sign. To get up close and personal and to touch the sign, the only way for me to do that is the only way I know how. I'm gonna build it. Millicent Lillian Entwistle was a young actress originally from Wales who immigrated to the US with her father in 1913. Her parents were divorced and her father remarried in the States and had 2 sons with his new wife. It's said that her father worked briefly on Broadway as an actor and behind the scenes as a stage manager. Growing up in theater, Entwistle was inspired to become an actress herself. She renamed herself Peg after seeing the play Peg, Oh My Heart. In 1921, her stepmother passed away, and in 1922, her father also died after being fatally injured in a hit-and-run accident. At the time, Entwistle was 14 years old, so she and her younger brothers went to live with their Uncle Charles, who was living in Los Angeles on Beechwood Drive, which is just a short distance from the Hollywood sign. Entwistle trained briefly as an actress in Los Angeles, but she longed to return to the prestigious theater stages in Boston and New York City. In 1925, at just 17 years old, Entwistle had already appeared in several Broadway productions. By 1926, she had been accepted into the esteemed New York Theater Guild, and a year later, she married another actor named Robert Lee Keith. Her marriage to Keith was very brief, and in its brevity, there was drama with his ex-wife regarding alimony, physical and mental abuse, among other things that essentially sent Entwistle's personal and professional life spiraling into a place where she would remain troubled and wretched by it for years to come. Not only did her mental health suffer, her entire career suffered because of her association with her former husband. By 1932, Entwistle made her way back to Los Angeles to pursue a career on the silver screen instead. Once again, she stayed with her Uncle Charles on Beechwood and began to pursue roles in film. Being the accomplished actress that she was, Entwistle soon signed a studio contract with Radio Pictures, also known as RKO. Shortly thereafter, she was cast as a supporting role in David O. Selznick's 13 Women. It's said that she was also really close to getting the leading role in A Bill of Divorcement, only to have lost it to Katharine Hepburn. While she landed the role in 13 Women, it would sadly be her only Hollywood film credit. Many say that Entwistle was devastated to learn that most of her role had to be cut by the editors, largely because her plotlines included incredibly taboo subjects. The psychological thriller was about a group of sorority sisters who killed themselves after being sent threatening horoscopes forecasting their doom. Even more, the movie dealt with lesbianism, most of which was cut by censors in post-production. Ain't that some shit? As if it weren't heartbreaking enough that most of Entwistle's scenes ended up on the editing room floor, she'd soon learn that her contract with Radio Pictures was not being renewed. Hazel! After a series of devastating blows, Entwistle was said to have been forlorn for much of the hot summer of 1932. While she had not been in LA for very long, it seemed she may have given up hope on her dreams. On the night of September 16, 1932, Peg told her uncle that she was going to meet up with some friends. Instead, she made her way up the hills just a short distance away, climbing her way up to reach the Hollywood sign. Some have said she had been drinking or was intoxicated at the time. As she reached the sign, her final moments were closing in. She climbed 50 feet up a workman's ladder to the top of the letter H, where the young starlet, who was once filled with hope, would sadly and very tragically jump to her death. About 2 days later, a woman who had been hiking in the area came across a woman's shoe, jacket, and purse. And when she began to look around, she realized that there was a body lying about 100 feet down the mountain. She called the police, who brought in Entwistle's uncle to identify her body. There was also a note found at the scene that read, "I am afraid. I am a coward. I am sorry for everything. If I had done this a long time ago, it would have saved a lot of pain. P.E." Her death was ruled a suicide. Within days, the story of the Hollywood sign girl was splashed across newspapers and tabloids across the US. The LA Times goes so far as to say of the event, "Peg Entwistle was the first to bring the Hollywood sign fame, albeit in a heartbreaking way." Her biographer James Zurich Jr. believes that Peg may have also been suffering from PTSD related to the childhood trauma of losing her mother, stepmother, and father. He also theorized that nowadays her depression would likely have been clinically diagnosed as bipolar disorder or something similar had she seen a specialist. Much of this story has become a legend, and there have been many rumors that circulated that after Peg took her own life, a few days or so later, her uncle received a letter from an LA theater company offering her the lead role in a play about a woman driven to suicide in the final act. According to her biographer, her half-brother Milton Entwistle, who was 12 years younger than her, recalled that a letter did arrive for her a short time after her death from her former studio, RKO. In the letter, the studio was offering her a role in a movie, though Milton couldn't remember what it was. However, Milton did remember the rage his Uncle Charles and Aunt Jane had felt toward the studio for not just calling with the offer instead of sending it in the mail, which in this case, those few days waiting on the correspondent to be delivered by mail made all the difference in this tragedy. Entwistle and her tragic story has become the stuff of legends in Hollywood, and there have been many who attribute strange sightings and happenings at the landmark to her ghost. For example, when the letter H fell off the sign in the 1940s, there were many who said it had taken its tumble down Mount Ida due to Peg Entwistle's ghost. There have been multiple reports from people visiting the sign that have been overcome by the scent of gardenias, sometimes accompanied by a ghost sighting. Allegedly, this was Entwistle's signature perfume and is said to be her favorite flower. This was the exact experience of Megan Santos in 2013 when she was jogging on a path she had been on many times before on the Griffith Trails, many of which sit in the shadows of the Hollywood sign. Santos says that she began sneezing because of an overpowering scent of gardenias. She was then overcome by a weird feeling that made her shiver all over. She describes what happened next, saying, "And then there was this woman with blonde hair and she seemed to be like walking on air. I immediately ran the other way." Another famous Entwistle ghost sighting occurred in 1990 when a couple hiking in the area claimed to come across a blonde woman dressed in what appeared to be a vintage 1930s attire and seemed quite disoriented. However, just a moment later, the woman vanished right in front of them. At the time that they reported this strange sighting, they were said to have no prior knowledge of Peg Entwistle's existence or how she died. Another incident was with a group of teenagers who had a close encounter with what they believe was Entwistle's ghost. Late one night in 1988, 4 friends, a mix of high schoolers and college students, decided to sneak through the fenced-off property to climb up the Hollywood sign. And despite their criminal trespassing, this illicit adventure had gone relatively smoothly up until the very end. Just before midnight, one of the younger members of the group had to go home, and while they were heading back down the hill to get back to their car, one member of the party lost his footing, sliding far enough down the hill that he was separated from the group in the dark night. The other 3 members said they called out to him, but they did not get a response. Eventually, he found his way back to the group, but the tone of the night had completely changed. There was this gravity of fear that had not been there before. And then, the individual who had fallen spotted a woman coming toward them on the path, pointing her out to the rest of the group. They described her as wearing heels, a veil over her face, and a dress that looked like it was from the 1930s. They say her footsteps were completely silent, and though she was walking up a hill, her movement was effortless. They tried to call out to her, but she did not respond. Instead, quietly, she came closer and closer to them on the path. When the group got close enough to see her face through the veil, even though it was obscured, they all became terrified and began to run for their lives, with her seemingly chasing them down the hill. At one point, she was said to be standing behind the girl who was with the group, who was then pulled away by another member of the party. They all managed to get away, and afterward, one of the members discovered the urban legend of the woman in white, and through his research, felt certain that the figure they had seen was the ghost of Peg Entwistle. The industry itself has played on the paranormal aspects of the Hollywood sign, recognizing it as a liminal space for angels, demons, or even ghosts. Some say that Lana Del Rey's song, Lust for Life, whose lyrics begin, "Climb up the age of the Hollywood sign," is a direct reference to Peg Entwistle. The world is mine. Peg Entwistle was also a major source of inspiration for a character on Ryan Murphy's Netflix show, Hollywood. Murphy said of Entwistle's legend, she was always the cautionary tale, the idea that Hollywood can chew you up and spit you out and not really be fair. I've never really ventured far from that idea, so I really just related to her struggle and her sadness. The city bought out the sign in 1944 as the Hollywoodland real estate development had gone bust during the Great Depression, and years without maintenance was turning the city's most iconic monument into an eyesore. In 1949, as the industry was on its way to recovery, the Hollywood Chamber of Commerce finally put together a plan to restore the Hollywood sign. They had finally put up the letter H, which had fallen over and was never restored up until this point, and removed the word land that directly tied it to the initial housing development it was meant to advertise. By the fall of 1978, a new Hollywood sign had been built, where it still stands as a worldwide symbol of the entertainment industry. Moreover, the mere image is thought to evoke hope, desire, and dreams in young, hopeful entertainers and creatives. However, for some, it might represent broken dreams. The symbolism of the sign is very subjective. Whatever it symbolizes, the pursuit for something that you desire will come with ups and downs. It's inevitable. It's a part of the journey. Never give up on yourself. Keep going. Push through, because you might be just around the corner from the thing that you've been hoping for.